We have 4 trustees present, so we do have a quorum. Excuse trustee Pearson. Next item on the agenda is approval of agenda action items, or approval of agenda. Anything that trustees would like to add, or is it good?
I move that we approve the agenda.
I second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor?
I
Any opposed? Okay, first action item on the agenda is fiscal year 21-22 amended budget. It's more of a, anything with the word budget in is Mr. Dooley.
Yes, so we have 2 here. The reason for it is that one amended budget is part of the other publication we had, and then the regular budget as well.
Any questions? Any discussion? Any questions for Mr. Dooley? All right.
I move that we approve the 2021-2022 amended budget.
I second.
Okay, it's been motioned and approved. It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor?
I
Any opposed? Okay, I'm not used to moving so fast. That's why. My second item, second action item is fiscal year 22-23 budget. Any questions for Mr. Dewey while he's at the podium?
I move that we approve the 2022-2023 budget.
I second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item, thanks Randy, appreciate your input. Next item on the agenda is certified staff contracts. Dr. Russell, oh. Sure. Did what am I looking? Oh, I'm sorry, I did, my apologies. Food service meal increase fee.
Chair Kirkman, trustees, we have Mr. Stoffer here today to talk with us a little bit about increase we're going to have in our meal services. He's here just to share some information and answer any questions you might have.
Chairman, we also had the fee increase hearing at the last meeting as well, just that we all are.
Thank you.
Really, this is just a connection to the times that we're seeing the increase. We have not had increases for several years. The last number was at least 4 years. So at this point in time, we are under obligation actually by the USDA to increase our rates. And so we have done so. You see the information we provided. Essentially, puts us in line with the other districts as well. We're still operating a little bit under the requested amount by the USDA. We're 2 cents under that still. So really, if I have any questions that I can answer for you.
Just out of curiosity, how was Valley View's at 210? We're at 235. They're a
These
bigger.
were old ones.
Oh.
Yeah, that was the years before.
19 and 20.
Yep. And this was all pre-pandemic because everything was frozen as we had the federal monies for free lunches and breakfast for all students. Since coming out of that, lots of prices have changed. Now we're at that juncture where we could not maintain those prices. And again, underneath USDA compliancy, we had to increase our rates. So we have done so to match their compliancy records.
That just doesn't make sense to me. Why would the USDA require us to raise our?
There you go. There it is. So
Yeah, now Randy wants to talk.
Called the weighted average. You have to have a weighted average, and that requirement is based off of how much cost to supply. In our current weighted average is 268, that where we were at, and you have to add that to our. Let's step back right here. The USD weighted average requirement is to cover increased food and labor costs. Currently, the food services does not meet and has not met that for the last year's increase, which was 315, as stated by the USDA. Historically, the weighted average increase is 10 cents yearly, and so that would put it at 315 for this year. We were at 268. We need to increase it, and the proposed increase is to 323. So it's really based off of the USDA, and the increase is based off of supply.
Sorry.
Yeah, only because I had to deal with this news. So one of the things we have to worry about is what's called a paid lunch equity. So our paid students can't be paying less than our students that are getting free, if that makes sense, and how much the government's giving us for the free lunch meals. For many, many years, we've actually had been lower, and we've always basically said, because we've had a fund balance in there, that, look, we don't need to raise our rates in order to do this. We don't really need to do this, but the USDA and the state and everybody's been coming down on us hard for years. The one thing to note is, because we're such high free reduced lunch, even this increase, believe it or not, even when I did the math, I think we're gonna get 20 or 30 grand more. So it sounds like this huge increase, but we have such little full paid people that we actually don't get a huge increase by increasing just this little amount. And our food prices and our value prices are gone significantly. So.
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Comments?
Chair, I move to approve the lunch meal price increases as presented in this memo.
I second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Certified staff contracts is the next item on the agenda. Dr. Russell?
Chair Kirkman, trustees, as you know, at our last meeting, we were able to come to an agreement with our association, and we by law have to issue contracts starting July 1st. And so you'll see here the certified contracts that we have for our certified staff. And we would recommend that you would approve those contracts.
Questions, comments?
No, I was excited to see that we're paying everybody over and above and beyond what the state would require. I think it's a blessing that we're able to do that.
We don't have to start over. do
No, so it was good to see. No questions. That would be my only comment. It's nice that we were able to do that. I really appreciate that we were able to pass the levy. Just a
Yeah, me too. There's been a lot of work that's gone into this, so we appreciate it, and I think it's well worth it to pass it.
It's good to have a contract in place too before teachers start.
yeah.
Okay. So no further questions or comments? Entertain a motion.
I'll move. I move that we I move that we approve the certified contracts. I'm sorry.
It is hard.
The heat is getting to me.
I second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item is administrator director contracts.
Chair Kirkman and trustees, in a like manner, need to issue contracts to our administrators and directors, and you'll see there in your board packet contracts for our administrators and the directors, and likewise would ask that approve those contracts so we get those out to our folks.
And I would move that we approve the administrator and director contracts.
I second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. It's flying. Okay, next item is staff retention. Dr. Russell, I believe it's yours too.
Yeah, Chair Kirkman, trustees, as you're aware, we agreed with our association on a contract, and as part of the agreement, our certified staff received a one-time payment. This is some of the money that has been generated from the enrollment ADA difference. We were paid an enrollment this year, which allowed us to have more money than previously budgeted. And what we have done typically is the district has extended those payments to our classified staff. And you'll see here, the administration has put together some information about if the board were so choose to do that, what that could mean. So we have 394 classified staff, and If we were to pay them at $500, you would see there is a cost of about $238,900. If the board were to choose just another amount, would be $750. We just chose a couple of amounts and just calculated those out for you. It was calculated on 1 FTE, meaning if you're full-time classified, you would receive a full payment. If you were a half classified, you receive a half payment. If you're 3/4, you receive 3/4, and so on. So administration would recommend that the board consider sending a payment out to our classified as well. The things are classified extremely important to how our district operates in a variety of ways, and would like to recognize them as well.
So just quick clarification, so if it was approved at $750, then that's the full-time, that's 100%, and then half of that would be for the halftime FTEs, right?
So if it was yes, it would be half of that dollar amount, correct?
And this does not include the administration, this is just classified.
This does not include the administration. Later in the superintendent's report, I would have a number for that as well, for the board to consider, either at probably another meeting.
Okay, good thing.
I feel like we've had a lot of discussion. Yeah, I feel like we've had a lot of discussion on this. I
Yeah,
don't have anything.
I'm ready for a motion.
I move that we approve the one-time, is it still like a stipend? Sorry, I'm not sure on the wording on that.
Classified extra pay.
Perfect, thank you. A one-time classified extra pay for the total number of classified employees we have at $750.
I second.
All right, it's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
I mean, I think we've talked a lot about this, and I think it's just important that we appreciate and value every single one of our employees in this district. And I think we recognize and know full well that, you know, they are the biggest impact on our students' learning, and keeping those quality people here is vitally important.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think we've had a lot of discussion, and one of the biggest ways I think that we can show that appreciation is the increase in pay that we just did and these stipends now, and obviously collectively that's what's happening. And so I think that this is a great way for us to show appreciation.
All right. Well, all in favor?
I
Any opposed? Motion carries. And that will go out in the summer. I mean, we are in the summer, but as soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
Yeah, I think about this week potentially,
Oh, good.
is what we're trying to do before.
Okay, great. So hopefully this week before the 4th,
If not this week.
if not soon after.
Similar to the teachers, we're trying to get out this week. If not.
Okay, I think that might be important information for some folks.
Well, we're trying, yeah, and we had to wait for this first.
Yeah.
And then we got the information almost done. We just wanted to make sure, and it takes 2 days for
Great.
all that other stuff.
So sooner than later. All right. Next item is the Franklin Roosevelt Elementary walk-in freezer and cooler replacement. It's a good day to talk about this.
Sure, Griffin trustees, very similar to your home, we have things in our schools that just kind of go out, and we had a freezer cooler that went out at Roosevelt Elementary. Our folks went to repair it, and they looked into it, and there were some parts that needed to be ordered, and realized that after we were looking into it more, that it does not look like that it's going to be able to be done with a simple repair. And so Mr. Stauffer is here to answer any questions you have on that. It looks like we're going to have to replace a whole cooler. And we're not, unfortunately, able to just do a simple replacement. We'll take a whole replacement. We'll look at Mr. Stauffer to make sure that's accurate. And we are going to do some inspections in some other coolers because we may have to replace some of others as they're starting to age.
Yeah, we actually found some rust in the roof of the cooler. With that, it needs to be replaced. It's not something we can fix. We're just kind of band-aiding it right now to make it through. Current orders are about 6 months out to get freezers, so that's why we have it here as priority, just we won't be able to get the freezer in until December. And so timeframes are more important to us as far as just getting the materials in.
And just trustees, just to let you know, we do have a backup plan in case the cooler just does go out. We will have a plan to be able to truck the food in, and we're hoping though, fingers crossed, that it'll make it till December.
That was gonna be my question is what if?
Yeah. We have plans for that already.
So, Chair, I have a question.
Sure.
Trustee, I'm just wondering, what was the lifespan of that?
It's the original. So I think FDR was built in
03.
03,
Uh-huh.
about 20 years. We have others in the buildings that are that age are starting to show the wear and tear. So we do again have some plans that we're looking at moving forward and seeing what needs more attention.
20 years.
Will last forever.
We haven't found that equipment yet.
Any other questions, comments for staff? All right. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion. Oh, because we're looking at that.
Oh, I see. I motion to approve bidder number 1 TDR to replace the freezer and cooler walk-in units at Franklin Roosevelt Elementary.
I second that motion.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? That's 6 months. All right, we are past the action items. So our next agenda item is some information items. We'll start with Dr. Russell.
Chairperson, trustees, tonight we're going to talk with you a little bit about a need to re-up our phase 4 lease on our iPads. But before we do that, I thought it'd be helpful to just share some background information around NAPLI's personalized learning. We call that MPL as an acronym. And really what it is a focus on the devices that we use in our school. And so we have a focus of trying to use technology and help our students prepare for the 21st century. This has been used in several of our, well, all of our schools have really implemented this in the last 8 or 9 years. It's a big part of our focus schools. Many of you have visited and seen those and seen how they're able to use technology to kind of help that vision they have in their schools. It's helped us integrate our curriculum in a variety of ways, from kindergarten all the way up to our seniors and even beyond. And then it's allowed us to have a wider digital access for some of our at-risk students and higher need students. And it's been really supportive for us to be able to adopt curriculum and allow us to help some of our special needs students around special ed. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we started this about 8 or 9 years ago. The goal was to start beginning to prepare students for a 21st century environment. Prior to that, we had used technology in our schools, but most of it was to type. Some of it was to learn a couple of computer programs, and our high schools as they got into that, but we didn't have a system to be able to use that throughout so that students would convenient to use some of those skills. And so every classroom in our district really relies heavily on our digital integration. Our teachers have become highly skilled into using those, and some of our focus schools, I'm looking at Mr. Knopf over here at Willow Creek, they've done an incredible job using their rotation and the way they've integrated technology into that and allowed them to have some tier 2 instruction on the devices while teachers can pull small groups and work one-on-one with students. So we've seen some really nice things from it. It's a big part of our district. Next slide, please. Just it's a little history for you, just to understand. We started this, like I mentioned, about 9 years ago, and we broke it into various phases so that we would allow us to be able to integrate this slowly and provide the professional development and training we need to. And so you'll see the early adopters, those were schools that worked with their staff and had a desire to start first and began to do some training with them. And then once those schools kind of got up and going, we had a phase 2. And so those schools had to apply as well into that. And they were selected based on some criteria about their willingness to go, their readiness to go, the support from the administration, the support from the staff to receive some of that PD and integrate that. And then phase 3 and 4, those after we got about halfway through the district, the other schools were phased in on phase 3 and 4. One of the keys is we do refresh our devices. We lease them because technology does age quickly and it does get out of date very quickly. One of the problems our district had for many years is we purchased our devices and then they quickly got out of date. And we didn't have uniformity across the district. So some schools would have newer technology, other schools would have older technology. Some schools could update very easily, other schools could never update. And what we try to do is have more uniformity, equity across so that everyone can have similar technologies, and the phase process of doing that has helped us maintain that. And that's what we'll talk about with you a little bit today when Cody comes up for phase 4. Just to share with you just a couple of the schools that have really used technology and highlighted that well. The arts integration focus at Centennial, the mastery learning at Greenhurst. Lake Ridge has done some project-based learning and used technology kind of help the students and highlighted their learning that way. I'll talk about Sherman in a second. Its focus, STEM, obviously a really big one, and we'll highlight them in a minute. Park Ridge, Willow Creek, as I mentioned, and of course our online school, Nova. We would not be able to really function Nova if we didn't have our devices available. It's not just in the elementary schools, our secondaries as well have used this well. We have West Middle School's Fusion program. Our Lone Star, it was an HP Spotlight school. Hewlett Packard came in and selected them and did some nice work with their staff and highlighted some of the things. We got our robotics programs across our middle schools that are continuing to grow and expand and be very competitive. Columbia High School STEM Academy is another one that has utilized technology extremely well. And our CTE schools, and of course the technology courses that I mentioned in our high schools. The one that we're really excited about is the potential for Sherman to be a Apple Distinguished School. This is something that you cannot apply for. Apple has to be able to choose you. And we will find out this fall. We are encouraged, and I don't remember the name, but there is a high-level person from Apple coming to visit us. So we're hoping that is good news for us. If this occurs, we would be the only one really, I believe, and look at Mr. Stauffer in the Northwest, to be considered an Apple Distinguished School, and it would be a great highlight for our district. So we're really hopeful for that, really proud of the staff, the work that the administration has done over there to create incredible work. If you get a chance to view Sherman and just see how engaged the students are, if you see their little data board they have with the technology in there, it just helps support a lot of the great work and has really created a strong vision for Sherman. I'm really proud of the work the staff has done over there. I'm going to turn over to Mr. Krebs here, and he'll share with you a little bit around our phase 4 adoption and that lease and what that means.
Yeah, thank you. So you, Superintendent Russell mentioned most of it, but we have to be able to refresh our stuff. It gets outdated, but it also gets worn out. Even after 4 years, they're used every day. The plastics on the laptops start to break down. The iPads, they're not able to keep up with the state testing because the RAM and stuff like that that's inside of them. So we have to keep that constant refresh. And we do every 4 years, we refresh something. So it's either half of an Apple fleet, or it's our student laptops, which are getting refreshed next year. We also refreshed half of our Apple fleet last year. And then this upcoming refresh will be the next half. So then we have another 3 years to go, and then we'll start the process over. The reason why we bring it up now is because of supply chain. It takes up to 10 months for us to get devices now. So we need to start the process a little bit early. We did it with the HPs. It worked out. We had to sit on it for a little while before we could send them out, but right now people can't get laptops. So we want to make sure that we have plenty of time to do that. And these are some of the reasons why we have refresh. I won't bore you with all those details. This is the company that we use, Insight Investments, for that refresh cycle. They build into the cost of the lease. They give us a discount on the devices, which is the cost it would be if we attempted to sell our gear at the end of the lease. So they give us a discount on the devices. They collect the devices back, and then they have a reseller that sells them. It's built into that. You'll see that in the upcoming lease. More information on why we do it and why we use Insight to help us. And then here is what's coming up. So we talked about we need to start ordering now because it's 8 to 10 months to get the Apple gear. This is what we're looking at, and those are the schools that will be refreshing next year. The other thing that we're doing in this upcoming lease is we heard the needs from our para-pro staff that they just cannot do their work that they need to do for the kids on an iPad. So I want to replace their iPads with MacBooks like the teachers have. So that's also in this one. And this is what's coming to you guys in July. It's going to be looking at the resolution for that lease, which is that half of the Apple. The other half of the Apple one and some extra stuff that's in there for the teachers. But the difference between these two is we do have the opportunity to go for ECF round 3 like we did with the past 2 leases that we did. There's no guarantee we'll get that. There's a few $1 billion left in there, but we may not get access to all what we think we will. So you're going to see both. One will be our lease cost with ECF, and the other one will be our lease cost per year without ECF funding.
Mr. Krebs, could you clarify ECF just for folks?
That's the emergency connectivity fund that the federal government put out when COVID hit to try and get devices and internet for kids when they're at home. And that's what we've been utilizing. So they started out at a little over $7 billion, and through the phases, we've spent their money. So that's it. Yeah, that's last.
Chair Kirkman,
Yes.
Cody, just clarification. In our last meeting, I made one together. You showed us the disposal, correct? We approved the disposal, and this is that same program.
So we do
Is that the
use,
back end of?
no, that was devices that we had to purchase that aren't in a lease for extra. And so we do
they're not
resell
tied.
those, correct.
Okay,
So those we send to a reseller and then we repurpose the money for student needs within the IT budget.
and these are different.
Those are different.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm not an Apple user, but is there any concern about using Androids, using Windows and versus MacBooks for our students in high school?
So the high school, they do use Windows laptops.
Right, but what about those students who,
So Chair Kirkman.
will they learn will they have the opportunity to learn on a Mac, on a iOS too?
Currently, right now, when we did this years ago, we worked with the school administration, school teachers. We had a criteria of selecting devices at each level and reasons why. Secondary selected it mostly because they wanted to have the use of the Microsoft suite, and that's why they didn't go with the Apple. So we do not have secondaries that use Apple devices. It's primarily Windows based. And well, I'll just tell you, our IT staff really likes Windows based. And they, I think, would recommend our older students use that. The elementary used the Apple because of the touch screen. And at the time, Apple allowed a single sign-on, so it was easier for our younger kids to be able to log on, where we didn't have to do that with Windows, and Windows wasn't as user-friendly. So originally, that's why it started, and that's why we have that break. But it is a good question, because you really want someone who's ubiquitous with technology and can use it at different varieties of the window operations.
Can I speak to that for a second? So what I've been doing is I've been trying to get the 5th graders ready for laptops in 6th grade. So we've been trying various keyboard combinations with the iPads. Got a new one that we're going to try this upcoming year. We tried one last year. Screws were falling out the bottom of the thing. So that was a failure. But these are the new ones that we're trying. They're going to be built better. They'll be on all the 5th grade iPads. And they can start learning how to use a keyboard and a trackpad on their iPads, so they're ready for those laptops in 6th grade.
It's tricky when that has been a concern, just the transition between elementary and getting them ready for middle school and moving to that. So we have contemplated having to do that at a younger age, but I think we're going to try a couple of these things to see if that helps the transition. If not, we may have to look at Windows devices.
And Nova will be going grades 3 to 5, Windows laptops next year.
Grades 3 through 5.
It'll be 3 through 12, but yeah.
Right.
they're- yeah.
They'll get the Windows.
Can I add that as digital natives, they tend to transfer over in a couple hours, whereas adults, it tends to take us a
Weeks,
couple
months,
weeks.
yeah.
Exactly.
Years.
My experience has been these young kids, it's, by the end of the day, they're down.
And I wanted to speak to your Android comment. Android is really hard to securely lock down. It's these two platforms, we can manage them. We can't manage Android. So we'd rather not have them on our network and our kids using them because we can't keep them safe.
Any other questions?
Do some of our CTE programs though utilize Apple products just based on
Yes.
the technology that they need within that program at the
Yeah.
high school levels?
Yeah, Yearbook uses them. We also do have iPads for some of our special education students because it's easier for them to see and to manipulate the device. Whenever that request comes out from special ed, we just swap that kid's device and give them an iPad instead of laptop.
Thank you.
Max had a lot of creative capability.
Any other questions? Dr. Russell, was Mr. Stoffer going to speak to this?
I don't believe he was. If you have questions for him, he could talk with you around the STEM focus and the Apple Store.
Okay. No, I was just wondering, you had mentioned him, I didn't know if you had something to say. I just want to comment on, I've seen what Mr. Stoffer does at Sherman, and it's pretty impressive. The technology and those kids use it, it kind of blew my mind, so very impressive. All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this to us so early. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So 8 to 10 months, that's quite a long time in technology life. So is there any concern about technology being outdated by the time those laptops get to our school?
So that's why I wanted to start the process a year early. Yeah.
So Chairman Kirkman and trustees, we will bring this back in July with the full ready to go as an action item.
I just want to do another shout out to our community for supporting supplemental levies that have helped us to work through those first 3 phases and the 4th phase and continue to do that. It's helped our students tremendously. So just another thank you for that.
Yeah, technology literacy is super important. So important. Yeah.
All right. Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, we'll go on to the next item, a challenge book process.
Chairman, trustees, we have Curriculum Instruction Director, Mr. Knopf, here to share with you a draft process, and we'd love to get some feedback and discussion around this.
You guys want to look through the material reconsideration procedure first, or
We'll follow your
We'll follow
lead.
your lead.
let's do that one first. 'Cause
Okay.
I think maybe the timeline with curriculum adoption, we probably have a little more time because October would probably be the first month we actually got going on something there. So, with the document I provided you guys, and I did the hard copy for you there. There's a note catcher on the back. This first page is probably kind of bouncing back and forth. So if the front one there's got the 4 levels. If you flip over on the back there, though, some of the bolted items there that are addressing anything that's in white on those levels. We might want to start there. I wasn't planning on reading through this word for word. I was kind of hoping maybe we would start with some feedback. I'll take some notes, questions, additions,
I
wherever
love
you
this.
guys want to be for.
I felt this is so good. This whole sheet, when I saw it, was great. So,
Okay, this is a working document.
Yep, got it.
Obviously,
yeah, you made it clear.
there's a few things that were cobbled together here, so I cannot take credit for being the brain behind all this.
It was great.
Just got to put a lot of it together. So.
All right, are those standing, like the standing reconsideration committee, the focus reconsideration committee, those would be open and public meetings, correct? Or would they not.
I've given that a thought. There's no board member on it, so I don't know if it's necessarily.
Yeah.
They would be open. It could be. Now, like the scanning reconsideration committee, we kind of see that as like they meet once a month. They're more kind of that filter between the building level and the deep dive, the community representative, the parent representative community would have. We also left that standing committee open. Like right now, I don't have any community members on there on this proposal. Doesn't mean we can't have. This is just where I started, and we kind of viewed that committee kind of as that filter.
I think that's important to know in whatever the final process is going to be, is that if there are no community members that are part of, even if they've been invited, if they've asked, they've been invited, but they don't show up, they don't engage in the committee, they're not on the committee. I think it needs to be kind of spelled out. Does that committee just stop until we find some, or does it continue to move forward? I think that was one of the confusions or one of the questions, like, well, patrons say, well, I wanted to be on the committee and didn't know. And so I just want to make that very clear. I want to make that transparent. Does that committee continue? I think it should. If we've given patrons and parents an opportunity to be on the committee, and then for whatever reason, they decide not to, that shouldn't stop the process. Does that make sense? And so I just want to make sure that that's transparent, and that's clear in the process also.
So you'd be referring to the focus.
Yes. Yeah, I probably jumped ahead.
Yeah, because you're standing, that's what I understood. I'm sorry, Chair Kirkman.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Your standing reconsideration committee was a forever, like a 2-year committee that would always be for that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I understood as well. Okay.
And then, like you said, with the way the flow works, they take up level 2 of bills within 30 business days. So we kind of see that committee meet once a month if something's on the agenda and address that. And then either we find a resolution at that level or it goes to level 3. The other piece on here, if you go up to the last bullet under guiding principles, in parentheses there, I put the 3 options. I think that's another thing that we need to clarify. When I looked through West Data board policy, it stated materials remain during the process, the reconsideration process. So I put that in there. I also put will remain with restrictions. If we go with that option, we'd have to kind of line out who puts the restrictions in place then. Or we just go with temporary removal during the process. I think depending on, I think what's probably, we probably need to step cautiously on the temporary removed in regards to some of these materials are supplemental materials in classrooms, they're on reading lists and stuff like that. So I think maybe that can get a little where the middle option gives us the ability to kind of say what kind of, because a novel set that's in a classroom obviously has a different level of restrictions on it. Say a book is sitting on a shelf. Those 2 materials are already just in nature.
Yeah, and that was, and thank you for bringing that up. That was another question I had. Is so if a book is part of a curriculum, then I think maybe that should go through that curriculum process rather than going through a challenge book process. Because to me, that book has been approved as part of that curriculum. So there's no need to go through the challenge book process. If a patron still wants to challenge that book as part of the curriculum, then I think that they go through that curriculum process, however that's. Does that make sense? Am I just talking in circles?
No, it would make sense, and it speaks to the fact that parents need to be involved, right? Which is what we want.
Yeah.
In the adoption.
In the adoption.
In the adoption process.
Yeah, the law definitely puts in a position where that's good.
Right. But at the same time, if the adoption process has already happened and we're going through this, then we may, if somebody challenges one of those books, then we need to actually kind of look at that.
But then we're looking at the whole adoption though, because it's already been adopted.
Maybe, or maybe
All right,
we're looking at
we're already-
of other options.
Yeah, we're already looking, now we're looking at the curriculum that's in effect, that's being taught, that's already been adopted by the board. And anyways, those are just some of the details. And I think this particular topic, we are gonna have, work session, maybe hammer out some of these details a little bit more and dive a little bit deeper. I think for the purposes of this, it's just kind of give us a 10,000 foot view maybe of what the process is from staff, and I love it. I appreciate the work that you put into this and what's come of it so far. Go ahead.
I think my understanding and what I heard through like curriculum adoption and then part of this process of reconsidering books is what I remember, and again, this is my memory, but maybe there are folks in the room that can help, but typically the curriculum has a list of novels or books. It's not like, okay, to teach this, you have to use this and only this book. So I think there are other options. If parent or student says, this book is not appropriate for me to read, right? But I don't know. I mean, I think we heard some of the librarians and some of the teachers speak to that as well.
Chairman Kirkman,
Yes.
when the legal counsel was here, we were discussing, and then follow-up from him was, does the board need to approve or go through the curriculum for supplemental curriculum? And he said yes, even if it's dual credit. And so that was when that's why we discussed having a work session to really make sure all of that was like completely done with the new law. So we haven't seen that take effect July 1st. And so I think that's another reason you guys wanted to do a
Right.
thorough work session, and we can talk about bringing those options there, and then maybe having legal verify.
Yeah, we'll take a deeper dive in a work session on some of these things, but to what's been presented today, are there any other questions or comments about what's been presented by staff?
No, I just think this is a good start.
I do too.
Appreciate the work that you started. Obviously, we're gonna dig in really deep into this, but from, this gives us a starting view, which I really like and I appreciate.
Yeah, I truly felt that a lot of this was self-explanatory and appreciated. I think that it's just grasping around, right? Like, because we're asking for something broad, I think, when we're asking for policy, and it's so spelled out when we're looking at the selection process. And I love where we say support the instructional goals and informational needs of students and staff, offer students and staff a collection of materials that will serve as an integral part of the curriculum and generate understanding of the American freedoms, which meets the needs and interests of the students and staff served. So I really felt like it was a great start. I don't know, there's so much good information, the way that it's written out. I actually felt that it was a worksheet and was gonna resubmit it to you. So it was like, oh, he gave me a worksheet, that's awesome. That's how it felt. So, very excited about that. It was very, very welcomed.
Yeah, and again, this will go into more detail in a work session. Of course, that's an open meeting also. And then this will come back to the board in an open meeting. Obviously, we'll take public comment on that at that time and place. And I have some more questions on here, but I'm gonna save those for a work session when we're really focused on this topic. But it is much appreciated. This is, I think, what we were looking for. It's a great start.
Yeah, Mr. Knopf, not only appreciated, it was needed.
Like I said, there's a lot of people who put a lot of work into a lot of stuff, so.
Pass on
I
our
won't
thanks,
name them.
but please do. Thank you.
You want to talk real quick about the adoption flow chart that I put in?
Yep.
So, whenever the work session was back by 1st of May, maybe right towards the end of April, probably the 1st of May, but we kind of brainstormed and there've been some things written out on the board. So I had some pictures of what was on the board. Obviously, thinking through what the new statute requires of us, and kind of thinking about what process we've already had in place for curriculum adoption and kind of how that's going to look different with the requirement of the new place. That's where I kind of just put this flow chart together. I felt like off of the first work session addressing this, I feel like something like a fact sheet of what we're proposing to get started on in regards to curriculum adoption. up front with the board go a long ways to put us all on the same page for the start. So that's kind of thought we'd start with that, and then obviously we need to select the committee. That's a big piece of what's going to be new. And then probably the pre-committee work probably won't change a whole lot. That's our staff that kind of digs in and does a lot of the research and potential candidates. A lot of that behind the scenes work that goes on. And obviously the committee work will be very similar. We're going to have to look at some things to be a little bit different. Our previous process was more of a 6 days, all day. Most of it was for professional educators though, so they get that as part of their work that day. Obviously with roughly 8 out of the 12 members now not being in our district, being parents and or community representatives or the board. By looking at evening meetings, much shorter meetings, and probably bring that number of days down. We'll figure out how to be a lot more efficient. We now have an audience that we have to take into consideration. Probably can't give 6 days to this, so and we get that. So we're going to have streamlined some things a little bit, but the work itself is probably fairly similar as far as kind of setting up some rubrics, getting some things down in place that we want to evaluate curriculum 2, getting that size down to 2 finalists, and then go to work. And then I added the same, and this is something we can work through as well. On the previous process, when we talked about the focus community, trying to look for that good district representation. So the thought of one parent representing that committee from all 5 zones, we thought maybe a good starting point for the adoption. Same one parent from each zone, and as a district. Just a good broad representation. So, questions on anything that's on there? And those example documents that are following that, those are all rough. Those are some snapshots and stuff out of the process. Just kind of gives you an idea of what that work look like.
Does the new statute, Chrissy, do you know, does the new statute require, or Dr. Russell, the committees be approved by the board? Is that an absolute in the statute? I can't remember if that.
I think the word select is in the language. Okay, board will select. I don't know if it goes deep enough to actually saying.
It does say the board select, but if they take action on anything, they have to do that at a board meeting.
And so we're still waiting for.
July 1st, and the books to come out for the final document, just in case anything changes. I think Superintendent Russell would verify that sometimes we all just pause and wait to make sure none of the word verbiage or intent gets changed prior to print.
As is prone to happen sometimes with the legislature. Should I say that out loud? I can't remember.
And not too long ago, July 1st seemed like a long way away.
It's,
We're down to a couple of days.
Yeah.
It's upon us.
Any questions?
Sure, Irvin, just a comment. I really appreciated you taking this work that we had already done and just organizing it, because that work session was long. We covered a lot of this material. I love the way that you laid it out. I just appreciate the work that went into it, because it really just helps to streamline the changes that we'll have to make. And I appreciate, again, how clear, concise, transparent that it all is. It's just very appreciated for you and your team.
Love the flow charts.
Yeah, I love those charts.
Just to put in the back of your mind, we will probably have 2 curriculum adoptions we'd like to bring up this next school year. And we figure that the first one will probably need this get kicked off somewhere around time-wise. The other thing we're looking at is we used to be able to kind of run things parallel. At least for this first year, we think we need to run one at a time. So try to get one done somewhere around January-ish. Get that second one kicked off somewhere around.
Is that we're just because we're not quite sure how long the process might take with the new law in effect, or
It's probably more just about how
or the curriculum?
how to get the committee assembled, what's that look like, what are some of the, I don't want to say unintended consequences, but what are some of the variables that we're now going to be working with this, inside these committees that maybe we're present before? I think we'd like to tackle one at a time. make some adjustments if need be. And the second one.
Yeah.
I personally would not want two at one time going on. I can visualize that as being a whole lot. For me and my team. So, I think just be wise to go one at a time, try to get one done in the fall. One done.
I'm always thinking, I'm just thinking of in the future a little bit, because parents want to be involved with this, and I get that. But then sometimes things come up and parents can't always be involved. So I'm just looking at the what ifs. The statute requires 5 parents, so, looking at alternate parents and, how they'd be involved with the process if they weren't there, So I'm not sure what all that might look like down the road, but if we have 5 parents on a committee and then all of a sudden we have 3 parents on a committee, does that negate everything because the statute requires 5? So I'm just thinking of the what ifs.
The good news that goes along with this, we've got all of our fellow districts kind of running through this for the first time.
We're not alone.
I think all of us, it's going to be kind of a learning year, an iterating year. We're going to learn some things. And I think the law itself too, there'll be some things that get hashed out there. So what it looks like 2 to 3 years from now. Probably. We're going to have to jump in the pool and start swimming this year.
Yeah, like it or not.
Well, and Chair,
Sure,
and
sure,
Ms.
sure.
Turnoff, I appreciate you not wanting to run them parallel, because I think you're giving your team plenty of time to make those adjustments that will be needed during that process on the first round.
Good. Any other further questions, comments? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Moving right along. Finance Treasury Report.
Chair Kirkland, we have Mr. Dewey here to review our treasury report.
Any questions?
Yeah.
So we are down to the last stages. I mean, obviously, your next couple days are final. But, remember, we still pay in July and August for those teachers.
Say it again, Randy. I'm
We
sorry.
still pay those teachers and
Oh.
those over the summer as
Okay.
well that go into this year. So you'll see a bunch of encumbrances in there as well. Everything will be cleaned up and everything done by the time the audit starts. It's done around October. So we're just now getting all the stuff, and then July will be cleaned up to make sure we get all the federal grants closed out.
Could you remind us once again on that property tax relief for those squeeze, what consequences that might have for the school district or not?
So property tax relief is tough, because if you remember right, what we do is we request $1, right? So back in the day when we used to have a percentage, our maintenance or operation was based on, similar to like the cities and counties, which was a levy rate.
Right.
Then any type of property tax relief that could potentially happen around could potentially hit us and our ability to get. What GoGo Squeeze is asking is they want to do a major remodel or addition to one of their facilities, and associated with that, they're hoping to get a slight or not small, I guess, a decrease for a short period of time in their property taxes in order to help, pay for that. In our world here, it doesn't give us anything more or less. What it truly does, though, is it doesn't help our current situation that our residential are outpacing our commercial in property tax. So the goal is to get a commercial to be a higher level percentage of our property tax in the state. And because commercial property value hasn't gone up as much as residential recently, that's where the flip has happened, and the state hasn't done anything with the homeowners exemption. So in that world, it hurts our residential for this to happen, but it doesn't hurt us, if that makes sense. It doesn't change any more or less than what we get. Now, in my opinion, a large increase in the facility this size brings in jobs, which also helps everything. Felt like the facility doesn't get used. GoGo Squeeze is one of our biggest employers in the area as well. They're only looking at a short-term property. It's not like a 40-year. I think it's a 5, and even then it was gradual with that. So, and it's new construction, so it's not something that has even hit our books right now. Anyway. So it's something that would potentially happen.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Dooley? Thanks, sir. I think that's it. And then we have superintendent report, Dr. Russell.
Chair Crickman trustees, just have a list of updates for you to go over with you, and then after I'm done, I'll allow you to, well, I guess you can just stop me as well if you have questions, but I'll let you ask as many questions as you would like. First of all, as we mentioned earlier, and we approved the payout for our classified folks, would like the board to consider a payout to our administrators as well. Again, very similar, we would do a payout for a full-time FTE as one, if the administrator was a half, we would receive a half. We have 50 and a half administrators. Our teachers got a one-time payment of $892, and we would recommend administrators get an $892 payment. That cost would be about $54,000. Happy to allow the board to have a discussion on that, and if so choose, the administration could bring something back in July. If not, then we can move forward with that. But just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board. We have a policy, policy 2700, which is our senior math. And right now our policy reads that seniors have to take math in their last year of high school. I think it's a very well intended. The idea was to help students prepare for their college or career. What we've seen though in practice is we have students who take math their freshman and sophomore year, skip it their junior year, and then try to take the simplest or easiest math class they can as a senior. And IDAPA rule has recently changed that, just recommends that students in high school take 6 credits. It does not dictate in which year. And we as a district will likely bring forth some policy maybe for the board to have some discussion around that and consider it. And I got Mr. Yarborough here. He can help answer any questions if you have around what we're kind of seeing our students do. Ideally, we think it's best that students would take math their freshman, sophomore year, and then take a challenging math class as a junior. And if they want to move on to college or need that, they get have the option to take that a 4th year. Curious to see what Trustee Simpson also sees being a math teacher. I just wanted to bring that forward to the board. It is Board Appreciation Month. Thank you. You all put in an incredible amount of hours and service to our students, and I just want to publicly thank you for the time. I don't know what board meeting we're on, probably close to 15, 20, but and we're only in June, so we got a long ways to go, but just want to appreciate you for your time and efforts that you put into serving the students in the community. On July 18th, we have a work session on our facilities plan. Our facilities plan was finalized this past week. We have been working on this for 4 years. It was paused a little bit during COVID. So that is why it was taken for a while. But really what we've done over the past 4 years have looked at our enrollment. We've looked at our building conditions and done a building condition assessment, and then looked at an educational adequacy assessment and put those all together. And it's allowed us to really look at a comprehensive view of where we are in our facilities, which facilities are aging, which facilities may need a replacement, and what that cost might mean. And we're gonna have Tracy Richter, who has been a consultant who has helped us along this journey, will be here on the 18th to allow the board to go in depth with that, to ask questions and to review it. And from there, we'll be able to maybe have some next steps possible to determine what's going on with that.
Chair Kirkman.
Trustee Taylor.
Superintendent Russell, just want to make sure that that will be recorded if I won't be able to be here on the 18th.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Another update here for you, Steered Straight. Had the opportunity, was really fortunate to come, Mr. DeLeon came and visited a school here in Napa, and myself and Deputy Superintendent Yarborough were able to go watch him. I believe Trustee Taylor also was able to go see him. Very powerful. What he speaks about is just the, I believe, epidemic we have of students vaping and using drugs and alcohol. And he has a very powerful message about the dangers of that. Something I really believe our students need to hear. So working with him, he is going to be here in the district visiting all of our secondary schools August 29th to 31st. We're also looking at having a community evening for parents and working through that, but just really happy to have him come. We haven't done something like this in our district for quite some time, and really believe it's needed, and looking forward to him being here.
So just for, just full disclosure, Michael De Leon and I have met, and he's actually done some stuff for me in my work, and we're planning on some other stuff in the state. So I just wanted to make sure that that was disclosed, that I have worked with him quite extensively and continue to do so in other aspects. So I'm excited to see him here. Got very powerful messages. It starts with smoking. It starts with smoking and then vaping, and it really goes through, so. I'm
And
excited.
excited that it's right at the beginning of the school year. I think it's a great way to kick off the school year with an important message, and would like to have the district have a focus on that next year. So working with our administrators as well, that we just don't have a one-off, but maybe we do something continually to raise awareness with our community and our parents, and our staff and our students as well about the dangers of addiction and coping with drugs and alcohol. Maybe there's other ways to cope with some of the things that we're.
Like, I do know he's planning on being in Idaho in this area quite a bit in the future, so we can reach out to him.
So one of the things with Steer Straight that I was looking at, and I actually have a book that we printed. They have a mental health program in there. It's pretty good. And it's free. And I think that as I'm going through that, I'm like, man, this is helping me, you know? And I'm thinking with all the mental health issues, the problems and suicides and the thoughts of suicide. And I think that's something that, you know, I'm actually excited to have this guy come over and talk to us. And maybe we can see what opportunities there are beyond the smoking and the vaping, you know.
Trustee Bai, absolutely will look into that and have some of our social workers and counselors maybe review that material and see where that goes. Just wanted to do a real quick update on hiring and kind of let the board know where this is. I updated the board a little bit on the Friday update this past week, but so far this year we have had 115 resignations. That it is actually a little high, but not abnormal. We usually have anywhere from 110 to 120, so that is normal this type of year. We do have a great deal of openings still though, and that is a little concerning considering where we are in July. The interesting part is most of it is in our elementaries. We have 25 and a half positions open in our elementary. Usually elementaries positions usually have 8 to 10 candidates for one position, but we are having difficulty with that. We're not unique in that. I think many school districts that I've spoken with across the valley is seeing that. I think it's just part of the staffing shortages, things that we're seeing throughout our country. It's also affecting us here. We have 21 and a half classified at the elementary that we still need to hire. Our secondaries, we're at 14 now. I think we were able to hire one since the update I gave you as far as secondary positions and certified staff. And then we have, I'll have to double check this number. I have 4.5 on Friday, but I talked to Mr. Lebu today. He said we have 10 classified positions in our secondaries. So I'll need to double check on that number. Point is we're working on getting our staff filled. Do have concerns with that, and we'll be working on some contingency plans. If we can't get hired, I would encourage anybody out there, if you know of anyone that has a teaching degree or a degree in general that's interested in an alt authorization, we could use some help there as well. So just wanted to give you an update where we're at with that.
Has there been a decrease in enrollment in Boise State or NNU in the teacher education program? Has there been any change in that?
Yeah, that really good question, Trustee or Chair Kirkman. I have not reached out. I can. We have spoken with some of the schools around possibly allowing some of the student teachers to maybe graduate sooner or be able to get in the classroom quicker. That's one of our strategies, but have not asked them about the actual enrollment numbers of what they're seeing. Statewide, the state has seen, I believe, a decrease, but again, that's also nationwide, so it's not, I don't know, it's really hard to pinpoint. What it is.
And they're seeing the same thing in healthcare and different.
Yeah, it is in many fields. Really feeling it this year though, that we can see it, and that's what, particularly elementary, being an elementary teacher and principal over all the years, and just really surprised to see that, but still plugging away and doing our best to recruit. And Mr. Stoffer has done a great job of opening up some other avenues in social media and I'm trying to hit some social media algorithms for out-of-state folks that might be moving in, so that we can be one of the primary ones there. And so some of the strategies that we're kind of focusing on that. Trying to highlight our staff a little bit more in social media, just so our folks can see who our staff is, and I'm trying to make it a welcoming place to work, because it is a great district. And so just some ideas with that.
Superintendent Russell. Mr. Stumper, I loved that post that you did highlighting the staff. And I'm sure that you know, and I'm sure that you know, but just so everybody realizes, that is really helpful to our algorithms, and that is becoming a place that you can actually pull people from. So I just am super impressed with that. I follow it all the time. Phenomenal idea.
Trustee Taylor, thank you. Hard not to like Leo. If you meet Leo, it's hard not to like Leo. The
My
last-
dad's name is also Leo. Just throwing that out there.
Last update, just want to update the trustees on the suspension school update. I was going to have Mr. Yarbrough come here and just give a real quick update of where we are with that, so the trustees have an idea about what's going to be open up this fall. And then we'll bring a more formal presentation probably sometime this fall to share with you. I just want to let you know where we are.
Chair Goodman, trustees, thank you for the opportunity tonight. The big scenario of why a suspension school within education, one of the major factors we look at is everything is on a continuum, and the support the kids need ends up on a continuum. And looking at the needs of our district, we have a number of kids that are struggling with some significant behaviors that are truly making some environments not safe for the entire school. But rather than just bring those kids to you, say, hey, expulsion is the only option, we want to look at some things we could do as one last chance, one last gasp effort to help kids maybe get back on track, get things situated, especially at the secondary level, where they can get back into school and hopefully continue to provide some opportunities for themselves and move forward. So what that suspension school will look like is we have a process for evidentiary hearings when a student engages in either habitual, long-term behavior issues that we can't correct, and we can't support them through. So we work our way up to this, or there is an event that is so significant that we have to bring them to an evidentiary hearing. We bring those to the secondary director, Mr. Steve LeBou. We have that meeting, we go through that, and then we basically work with the family for what options we have. And this is one other option on that continuum of, hey, we really don't have a lot of other options. We're going to try and give you this for a short period of time, a defined period of time, maybe 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 12 weeks, depending on the situation and the student. And that might be then after that time, if that student is unable or unwilling to do what they need to do, we do bring them to the board, because expulsion is the last route. We're trying to add in one more layer to support our kids and support our kids to get back on track. But we also know that there are some significant behaviors that we need to address that way and pull them from the general population to support that. I'd be open for any questions on that. The long-term plan is that suspension school, then a kid could eventually work their way back to their home school, whatever that is, a traditional school or union or Nova, whatever that would be. But the long-term plan is to look at adding in another layer of what I call a traditional alternative school. We have to have an innovative alternative school with two of those, with Nova and Union. But we would have another element that we would be building over the long-term process. And that would be something we can talk about later in the fall with Dr. Marianne Vanderbrake, who's heading that school for us.
Would that require we don't have something like that now, so that would require a policy, probably a new policy, or would it be a change to an existing policy?
It could, depending on how we put that together. This piece right here is something that we can do as a program in any of the school. It can be just like holding a kid in school suspension for a long period of time. We can do those things. Again, it's adding in that layer of support as we go through an MTSS, multi-tiered system of support model of what are we doing to try and keep a kid from, hey, expulsion is the last option. So speaking particularly the suspension school. The long term, again, is finding those kids before they get to that spot. And there I'm talking about the kids that are the habitual, we just cannot break through, giving them another option with more support and things that we can reach them academically, behaviorally, mental health, all of those things that we know some of our students really struggle with. So.
When's this gonna start?
The suspension school will start this fall. So that would be, again, we may hopefully have no kids in there all year. That would be an amazing accomplishment, right? But what we need to have that program in place, and Dr. Vanderbrake will be helping build the groundwork for that the other arm of that, the other traditional alternative school to be starting in next year in the fall of 23 will be the hope.
Any other questions, comments?
No,
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustees, that completes our update. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Russell? I do want to ask a couple of questions, and this might be, well, maybe some things to think about. Going back to the bonuses, or I wouldn't call them bonuses, the stipends for administration, and listening to some of the struggles maybe of getting teachers in the classroom this fall. And I'm looking at this schedule of administration pay, and I think the average is about 95,000 for administrators. I'm wondering, and I'm just throwing this out for further discussion, not necessarily for here, we're certainly not going to take action at this point, but an 800, I think you said $892 or something like that for administration comes out to about 55, 56,000. Maybe that's something we look at, maybe putting towards an incentive, or I know we've done that for teachers as a retention to stay, but maybe we use that as a hiring bonus, maybe looking at $1,000 or something for a hiring bonus for teachers coming into the Napa School District. So first, for consideration.
It's kind of interesting that you say that, because I was thinking about bonuses for new hires. And obviously, we will still have leftover money for it to be that much, and I think that we can, whatever's not used, we can give back to the administrators. But I think it will be a great incentive.
Yes, it's not just the environment, the economy, the environment, the workforce, it's the competition also with Valley View and CUNA and all these other school districts too. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth some consideration and discussion, and refocusing that money maybe towards getting new hires and teachers in the classroom where we need them.
Chair,
Trustee
when would we like to direct our Dr. Russell to maybe look to see what those hiring bonuses are at other schools if we're talking about being competitive? Would we?
Yeah, I think he was going to put some, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to come back at a future date to kind of consider this administrative director contracts. Maybe that's something we can look at.
Sure, Chair Kirkman, trustees. Yes, I plan on July would bring back probably a more formal memo for the administration, but I'm happy to explore a possible signing bonus or something along those lines for our certified folks to help close some of those gaps. And I'm happy to talk that with our human resources department and maybe bring back some sort of proposal around that.
Sure. He's got his hand up. This must be about money. Come on up, Randy.
So there, in this discussion that we've had with the extra funds, there was a lot of different things sent out, that talked about what do we want to do, right? My curiosity is, at what point in time are you guys going to make a decision? We need to have some discussion on, hey, are we going to do extra supply budgets? Are we going to do signing bonuses? What are we going to do? I need to set it aside from this year's budget in order to make it, because next year's budget is next year. So I just need to get that information from you guys probably by July meeting, if possible, so I can have it ready and have it set aside for when we put y'all together and do all that. We can be prepared for it and be prepared for what we need to put out there. I believe we'll have better numbers next month, but even with these, the money that we currently believe we're spending, it's about $2 million so far. Even if we decide to give some for the administration, it's been administrators. We would
Maybe
still have
two
like
total
$2 million
left or spent?
Yeah. My hope would be we'd still retain some of that money towards our fund balance for the future, because I think we're going to have a pretty good clip in the future. But there's a good chunk of money that we would like to try to get out to schools as much as possible. And I'd like to get some direction if we could, in order to proceed with that, so we have some direction prior to school starting in August. Because once school starts, it's going to be hard for administrators to take classes to kind of figure things out.
Sure. Oh, sorry.
Who's
Sorry.
first?
Go ahead.
Dr. Russell, go ahead.
Just Chair Kirkman, trustees, one thing that the board has discussed is a desire to get it back into students, and the administration's happy to bring something in July that might help focus that a little bit. We had talked about maybe having a per student dollar amount that would go to schools, that schools could then use with their teachers and allow teachers to be able to purchase or do what they would like with it through some sort of application process at their school or request that might be able to help some sort of programs. So happy to bring some of those numbers. I know I've shared those with Mr. Dewey a little bit, if that's something the board would like, or if the board has other ideas and how you'd like us to help get that in students, happy to do that.
No, I think that's, oh, go ahead, trustee Taylor. Yes.
I just wanted to, for clarification, we are gonna see two things. A suggestion or something around, sign-on bonuses and then something around administrative bonuses, but correct.
Trustee Chair, that's accurate.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then I will adjourn this meeting. We are adjourned at 7:16. Let the record show this. I think we hit the record.
Ouch.